It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the movies of July 1st, 1994. We got 5 movies to look at today, so let's go ahead and get right to it. Let's start off with the biggest new release of the weekend. Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? Only the Shadow knows. So this is, of course, The Shadow, starring Alec Baldwin as the role of Lamont Cranston, of course, based off of the pulp comic book of the 1930s. And at the time, it was not seen as a big hit. It was a mostly mixed bag. It got mixed reviews, but it was seen as a commercial failure. But it was one of those movies that I remember mostly because of that marketing campaign. And even though I didn't see the movie for a long period after that, it took me about almost 20 years before I actually saw this movie for the first time. And honestly, after all these years, I actually kind of enjoyed this movie. I think it's a very unique, stylized movie for its time. It's definitely got a lot of flaws to it. It's definitely not one of the best superhero movies that came out at the time, but then again, superhero movies, comic book movies in general they just weren't as good as they've become today. They didn't have that spark that they had today. But I mean, it's a pretty good movie. I like the visual style of it. I think Alec Baldwin fits this role very well as Lamont Cranston. I like John Lone as the villain in this. Got a great cast. It also includes Penelope Ann Miller, Peter Boyle, Ian McKellen, Jonathan Winters, Tim Curry. Just a great cast overall. Especially considering that this came from the director of Highlander. This is a much better movie than Highlander 2: The Quickening was. And honestly, it's up there with probably his best movies. I mean, this is a really solid film that is an enjoyable ride. It's an enjoyable summer popcorn flick, and I think if you go into it like that, don't go in there expecting like a masterpiece or something like on the levels of something like The Dark Knight or the Batman or anything like the best superhero movies out there. If you go into it with a note that it is essentially a modern film noir based off of a pulp comic from the 30s, you go in there and you actually get what you get in here. It's a very good film, very visually pleasing, a good performance by Alec Baldwin, some good action overall. It's a pretty good film. I think it deserves a lot more attention than I think it is. I mean, it deserves a little bit more praise than I think it got back then. I'm glad to see that it has somewhat of a following that's been established over the years, because it really is a movie that is very well done for the most part. Not a classic by any means, but I really enjoyed the film a lot. So that's The Shadow. Let's move on to the next movie, and that is Jeff Bridges and Tommy Lee Jones in Blown Away. Let Tommy Lee Jones's terrible Irish accent set the tone for how bad this movie is. This is a really bad movie. It's really, really, really bad. I mean, let me put it this way. Speed came out a couple of weeks later, and this movie came out, has a very similar premise to it, has a much older actor as the hero than Keanu Reeves and Jeff Bridges. Jeff Bridges is a great actor, but he really couldn't save this movie, and this movie just really is just... Talk about bad timing to put this out at the same time as Speed, because Speed is the far superior movie. This movie is just terrible. It's just a lousy, lousy movie. From those accents of the Irish people, of the people who are playing Irish characters in this, the drops and the explosives are not that good either. They're not even that exciting whatsoever. You got a woman who's forced to keep typing a specific number of words. If she doesn't, the thing blows up. You got Jeff Bridges' father, Lloyd Bridges, in here playing somebody who gets caught in a trap looking completely ridiculous. This is one of the most ridiculous looking things they've ever made Lloyd Bridges do, and Lloyd Bridges has done some crazy things before. Like, this is a role where he's supposed to be taken seriously, and I'm laughing more here than I was in Hot Shots. Like, I took him more seriously in the Hot Shots movies than I do in this movie. It's just like, what were they thinking when they made this movie? It's just a bad film on so many levels. It's not enjoyable. The traps aren't that exciting. The villain is not a very good villain. Just a waste of talent on all levels in this movie. This is a terrible, terrible movie. One of the worst movies to come out of 1994, and it definitely shows. Like I said, watch Speed. It's the much better movie. Blown Away is just complete garbage, and that's pretty much all I got to say about that one. So let's move on to the next movie, a movie that has a lot of problems to it as well. Julia Roberts and Nick Nolte in the romantic comedy, action comedy, I Love Trouble. Again, kind of like Blown Away, you can kind of see what the problem is with I Love Trouble right off the bat. it really doesn't know what the hell they're trying to sell to you. Like, you got Julie Roberts and Nick Nolte playing the couple and playing the two love interests in this. They sell this as kind of like a romantic comedy slash crime film at the beginning, but when you watch the TV commercials for this, they really don't know what angle they want to sell this to. Do they want to sell this as a comedy? Do they want to sell this as an action movie? Do they want to sell this as a thriller? Like, I can't put all of them on here because, of course, YouTube copyright concerns. But when you watch those commercials, you really can't tell what the hell they're trying to sell you. And I think that's part of the problem with the movie. The movie doesn't even know what it wants to sell you on. This is Nancy Meyers and Charles Shire, who had done Father of the Bride. They did Irreconcilable Differences. They did Baby Boom, and they've done these movies in the past, and this just feels like something that's completely out of their jurisdiction, like something like they didn't really know what to do with. Like, I think this was just a bad idea by both of them. Like, by both of them to do this, it's just like, I really don't know what the hell they were trying to sell this movie as, and I think the movie's biggest problem is that it can't figure out what it wants to be. Does it want to be taken seriously? Does it want to be more comedic? Does it really know what it's trying to sell you, or is it just trying to sell the name Julia Roberts and Nick Nolte? And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's a film that just is all over the place. It isn't even that. It's not really that funny. There's not a good action aspect to it. The thriller aspect is not very interesting whatsoever. The antagonist in the movie is not very interesting. It's just a movie that fails on so many levels, and it's just like, I don't know what the hell they were thinking with this movie when they were putting it together. So that's I Love Trouble for you. Another one of the year's worst movies. Let's move on to the next movie, and a much more enjoyable movie, at least in my opinion, and that is Baby's Day Out. You know, sometimes it's okay to enjoy really silly movies and stupid films. And this is one of those exceptions. I remember I used to watch this movie a lot as a kid. I used to have the videotape for this, and then when I finally got on the DVD many years later when I grew up as an adult, I went back to it and I realized that, yes, it's an incredibly stupid movie. Yes, it's not really all that inventive. It's not really all that exciting. The trailer pretty much lies to you to make you think that, oh, these guys are actually people who are trying to find this baby. But no, that's not the story whatsoever. These guys are basically criminals a la Home Alone's Harry and Marv, and Baby Bacon's pretty much this movie's Kevin McAllister, because he keeps getting into these situations where the criminals will actually get into these different traps, and not even traps, just like these unfortunate circumstances. It's like a live action Looney Tunes cartoon, honestly, and like I said, it's not an intelligent movie whatsoever, but you know what? I love the hell out of this movie, and even as an adult, I can still go back to this movie and be like, you know what? It's stupid, but you know what? I'm having a ton of fun watching this movie. This is a movie that it's held up very well. Like, I can't help but laugh at some of these ridiculously silly situations. And it's just like, it's hilarious. It's hilarious to watch these situations and watch the elements of comedy that they're throwing here. Like I said, it's like watching a live action Looney Tunes cartoon in a way. And it's not done the best. It's not done very well, but at the same time, I'm just laughing at how silly and ridiculous that this whole thing gets. And like I said, it's silly, it's stupid, but I love the hell out of this movie. I really do love this movie so much. I go back to watch this movie every once in a while, not all the time, but every time I do, man, every time I go back to it, I'm just like, I'm having a good time with it. I'm laughing a lot. I know it's stupid, I know it's ridiculous, but at the same time, there's nothing wrong with liking stupid and ridiculous stuff. In a way, this is kind of a guilty pleasure for me. And, I mean, honestly, I've liked it a lot better than some of the other John Hughes movies he's written at this point, but, in between the Home Alone movies, I should say, not all together, but, yeah, like I said, not a good movie overall, but it's a fun, silly, stupid movie. I can't help but enjoy it. And I guess it is one of my guilty pleasure movies. It's a movie I can go back to and just to have a good laugh at, and I'm really enjoying the hell out of it, So there you go. That's Baby's Day Out. Let's move on to the last movie that we have here, which is Little Big League. So here you got one of these movies that, on paper, kind of sounds like a generic family film. Doesn't sound like anything too investing or too exciting, but you know, when you really look at it, as you actually see the film, like I did about 20 years after this movie came out, it was one of those little surprises. It's a movie that kind of takes you by surprise by the story. It doesn't go the typical family film route. There are things about it that are kind of enjoyable, even for somebody that doesn't like baseball all that much. I'm not really a baseball type of person, but I really enjoyed this film. I thought this was a movie that was pretty good. It didn't dumb itself down for strictly for children. It felt like a movie that both parents and kids can really get invested in. And it's a pretty entertaining film. It's a film that has a lot more to it that I think a lot of people give it credit for. It knows how to mixes the comedy and the heavier moments enough to where it doesn't feel like it's forcing it on you. The casting overall is very well done. You get some notable names in here, including Tim Busfield from 30 Something, John Astin, Kevin Dunn, Jonathan Silverman, Dennis Farina, Jason Robards as the grandfather. Some notable MLB players: Ken Griffey Jr. is in here, Lou Piniella. Who else is here? Randy Johnson, Dave Madigan, Tim Raines, Chris Berman is in here. And it's just an entertaining little film. It doesn't do anything groundbreaking, but it never feels like it's a movie we've seen done over and over, and it doesn't feel like it's pandering down to people. It's a film you can get really invested in. It's a very interesting story. It's a ton of fun to watch. It's a little gem that I found very late on, and I'm glad I kind of found it. It's a movie that I think deserves a lot more attention, and I'd say definitely check it out if you can find it. Little Big League. You might actually be really surprised when you see it. And so on that note, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. Next time we meet, we only have one movie to look at. It's the biggest movie of the year. It's the film that won Best Picture at the Oscars that year. It's Tom Hanks and Forrest Gump, so we'll definitely delve into that one on the next episode. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for another episode. So thank you for watching, I'll see you next time, and until then, as always, take care.